Hi everyone, this is Slaven Selection again, and what you're hearing is not Flight 247 for Mars, as you might remember from the famous rock band song Clouds Across the Moon. No, we have a brand new soundtrack here. I'll tell you more about it maybe later on, maybe next time. Yeah, it's not March yet. Last time I said it was March, but it was still February, and it's still February. So this time I won't make the same mistake. It's February 27th, and we have the background music that you're hearing is by Ukrainian musician Yrii from Coma-Media, and the name of the team is This Minimal Technology, which is pretty convenient. So let's talk about Mars Day. Remember that helicopter Ingenuity? It actually has a last flight on Mars was like less than a month ago. So its blades were damaged, too bad, but it did way more than anyone was expected. But let's go back in time. So Nicolas Camille Flammarion was a French astronomer and a prolific author of more than 50 titles. In 1907, he wrote that he believed that dwellers on Mars had tried to communicate with Earth in the past. And also, beginning with Giovanni Schiaparelli in 1877 observation, he was a 19th century astronomer observing Mars. He believed that he saw a network of lines on its surface, which were named canals, or canali, I guess it was in Italian. So this turned out to be an optical illusion due to the limited observing instruments of the time, as revealed by better telescopes in 1920. And Camille, a contemporary of Schiaparelli, extensively researched the so-called canals during the 1880s and 1890s. Like American astronomer Percival Lowell, he thought that canals were artificial in nature and most likely the rectification of old rivers aimed at the general distribution of water to the surface of the continents. His remarkable work also includes famous study of the planet Mars and its conditions of habitability. No other place in our solar system inspires so much as Mars does. And have you noticed how I said our solar system? Well, that's humans. Real estate, premium or not, it's still real estate, and the real estate is probably the only limited resource here on the pale blue dot, unless we geoengineer something completely new out of scratch by dragging bits and pieces from asteroid or the Kuiper belt. But that is somehow unlikely in the near future, and who can claim rights to it? Well, as it is on paper, Mars does not belong to any individual or nation. It is considered a celestial body that is not owned or claimed by any specific entity. International space law, particularly the Outer Space Treaty, which was adopted by the United Nations in 1967, establishes that outer space, including Mars, is free for exploration and use by all countries. Again, it's all on paper, but you know how it is. History is written by the winners, and the future will be decided by those with more resources. So I guess whoever can will grab whatever they can on Mars, as always. But as always, it's not about the strategy, but logistics. It's all about money, and just ask yourself who has the most and who will be able to sustain the same economical and scientific progress for the longest period of time. Yeah. Can we move to Mars anytime soon? Perhaps. The good sign is that there is a large support for red planet exploration, at least in US, where 53% of people are in favor of landing astronauts on Mars. I don't know what is the percentage like in Canada. I have to check that out. And I bet he didn't expect that much. Still, we, the ordinary citizens, we don't have power to make such decisions, and that is where personalities larger than life are here to help us to achieve the dream, like legendary astronaut Buzz Aldrin, then Robert Zubrin and the Mars Society, of course Elon Musk with Richard Branson and Virgin Atlantic, among many others. So current plans for Mars exploration and colonization are oriented towards establishment of permanent habitats that can self-expand and sustain life. But didn't we plan something like that before? Sure we did, and it went nowhere. The big dream of putting humans on Mars forever died 5 years ago. Remember Mars 1? which was the most ambitious project so far, collapsed under unrealistic expectations. The greatest space flop of the century was certainly overhyped, but I have to be honest, I was really ecstatic about what they were promising. But that's in the past. Many more will come, hopefully. We have to move on. Mars or not, we need another basket to put our DNA and data to. But now you're probably asking yourself, where is the fourth rock from the Sun anyways? Okay, so something about Mars, as it is. 3 million years ago, Mars could have been similar to Earth today. But today the air is gone and the rest of the water is under the ground. Mars is the fourth rock from the Sun, and with thin atmosphere made mostly of carbon dioxide, frigid temperatures, and only 1/3 of the Earth's gravity, it only looks good when you see it on the pictures made by Curiosity. Mars' orbit is more elliptical, and unlike Earth, Mars' day is only 37 minutes longer than the Earth, and the gravity is only 1/3 than here on our planet. The atmosphere is very thin, and it's really cold. It can go down to -100, but it can also be as warm as -20. And the atmosphere is almost entirely made out of CO2, and on the polar caps there is a dry ice under which is frozen water. However, Mars' atmospheric pressure is a significant setback. It's only 1% of Earth's atmospheric pressure. Mars is also only half Earth's diameter and has only 11% its mass. There is no magnetosphere or plate tectonics. It is cold, not so much because of its distance from the Sun, but because of its size. So solar panels, for instance, on the red planet are only 43% efficient as on Earth. And without a large moon like ours to stabilize it, Mars wobbles tens of degrees over hundreds of thousands of years, much more wildly than Earth. When Mars points a pole toward the Sun, billions of tons of CO2 might be released, unleashing epochs of greenhouse warming. And this might melt subsurface ice, letting the water flow, but at temperate times can never last. Methane levels can suddenly boom. The atmosphere is thick just enough to heat the vessel while coming in, but not enough to keep the atmosphere intact. Sure, there is a toxic regolith on the red planet, but Mars is also rich in aluminum, titanium, silicon, magnesium, carbon, cobalt, platinum, molybdenum, nickel, iron, and other metals, plus water and carbon dioxide, of course. Ice, and only because of it we might go there to exploit whatever we can, because that is one thing humans are really good at, exploiting, right? Mount Olympus is the tallest mountain in the solar system. I think it's three times taller than Mount Everest. It's something crazy. And Valles Marineris is covering nearly a fifth the circumference of Mars, and it's pretty big. The canyon system Valles Marineris reigns as the largest canyon system on the red planet. Also, Mars has two, compared to our moon, really tiny and asymmetric moons, Phobos and Deimos, which are most likely asteroids catch forever with Mars' gravity. Phobos is buzzing around really fast, like every 8 hours. They were both discovered by A$AP Hall in August of 1877. So when you think of Mars, like something similar on Earth can only be found in a University Valley on Antarctica or Atacama Desert in Chile. This is the closest thing to what Phoenix landed at, right? Back to history. Aristotle observed the moon passing over Mars, so he concluded Mars must be really far away. And Romans thought of him as a god of war, and Babylonians believed Mars was quick, impulsive, and volatile god. The first telescopic observation was made by Galileo Galilei in 1610, and in 1704 Giacomo Filippo Moraldi guessed dark rings around poles might be the Melt lines, which 80 years later was confirmed by Friedrich Wilhelm Herschel. So many names are in the history of the observation on Mars that it should be a separate episode just to cover all of them. Like Copernicus, Camille Flammarion, Pietro Angelo Secchi, Francesco Fontana, Huygens brothers, Johann Heinrich Mödler, Wilhelm Beer, Richard Anthony Proctor, Nathaniel Green, Kraft Arnold, Erika, I hope I pronounced it right, Karl Lampland, Tycho Brahe, and so on. So missions were many, and for Soviets, they were mostly terrible. Like they had a lot of fails. And 35 years ago, Soviet space probe Phobos 1 suffered a terminal failure en route to Mars. The reason US never stepped on Mars before was mostly because of Nixon. He got scared, thinking that a possible failure while landing would in political terms have catastrophic consequences, so he only approved Space Shuttle's program. So, back to Ingenuity. Last flight, which was on January 18, 2024 in Neretva Valleys, Ingenuity exceeded every expectation, so instead of being a little more than a proof of concept, it became one of the most important experiments we ever did on the Red Planet. We actually flew there. We operated a tiny helicopter on Mars, and that is something, my friends. There were many missions to Mars, more that we can mention now, but let's just remember a few. 1958, Project Orion. 1961, Nerva. July 14, of course. 1965, Mariner 4 with 21 images that he made, and of course 1976 Viking landers, and then 1977 Sojourner. In 2004, Spirit and Opportunity discovered iron blueberries, and in 2008 Phoenix found water evidence. 2012 Curiosity Lab, and 2021 Perseverance. I will come back to Mars mission in detail sometimes in the future, so let's see what the scientists say. When Mars is mentioned, we often think of Robert Zubrin, and no doubt he's one of the key figures when we speak about the Red Planet. When I think of Mars, it's always Chris McKay that comes to my mind. He's an American planetary scientist at NASA Ames Research Center, majored in physics at Florida Atlantic University, and received his PhD in astrogeophysics from the University of Colorado. The way he got interested in geology was growing up in Florida, as one of his professors put it. There's not a rock within 1,000 miles of South Florida. It's just sedimentary and flat. There's no geology. And Chris could never understood why people were interested in geology. And then the first time he left Florida, when he was driving to Colorado, and as he was driving through Tennessee and the Appalachians, and up and down these cliffs and hills and rocks, he told himself, oh, this is why they do geology. So his passion for the subject is one of a quieter kind, but not less convincing. Astrogeologist McKay is famous for his interest in open source lecturing about Mars and life in space in general. Space, search for life, Mars is such a natural way to excite kids about science, engineering, and math, he said. There is no easier way to make them do their arithmetic and learn their multiplication table than to give them a vision of going into space and be an astronaut and searching for life. Flying to Mars and doing all those great things, it's a natural attractor for kids, a natural way to motivate a desire to learn science and math. Space is kind of like dinosaurs in that sense. Kids are naturally interested in, and if we can say that there were dinosaurs on Mars, we would get it both together. McKay's research primarily centers on the evolution of the solar system and the origin of life. He's actively involved in planning future Mars missions, including human exploration. McKay advocates a moderately biocentric position in the ethics of terraforming. Then there is a great astrophysicist and professor at the University of California, Berkeley. Of course, I'm talking about Alex Filippenko, one of my favorite people when it comes to exploring of the universe. And he also shared insights on Mars and its significance in the understanding our origins. He highlights that the connection between Mars and Earth, both originating from the same ancient disk of gas and dust. Filippenko emphasized the importance of learning from past mistakes to ensure a more successful future exploration of Mars, potentially leading to a semi-permanent settlement and paving the way for further exploration in the Milky Way galaxy. Additionally, he has appeared in documentaries like The Universe, discussing topics such as Mars and its implication for life. He expressed support for the idea of Mars colonization. Filippenko recognized the challenges of Mars as a harsh environment. He suggests that in order to establish a colony on Mars, structures like domes would be necessary to provide a habitable environment. Additionally, he mentions the need to melt water from the permafrost or transport it from polar caps. He also expresses caution about the timeline for establishing a thriving colony on Mars, indicating that it might be more challenging and time-consuming than some optimistic projections suggest. Some other people, like Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon and Blue Origin, has expressed his vision for space colonization, emphasizing the idea of creating self-sufficient space structures rather than focusing on colonizing planets like Mars. Bezos envisions humans living in free-floating spaceport colonies designed by Princeton physics professor Gerard O'Neill, better known as O'Neill cylinders, which could accommodate a large population and provide a sustainable living environment in space. Unlike Elon Musk, who is focused on establishing self-sufficient colonies on Mars, Bezos believes in utilizing resources in space to address challenges on Earth and preserve our planet as the gem of the solar system. Then, of course, one and only Neil deGrasse Tyson, an astrophysicist and a science communicator, has expressed mixed views on Mars colonization. While he acknowledges the scientific and exploration value of sending humans to Mars, he has also emphasized the importance of addressing practical and ethical considerations. Tyson has pointed out that the challenges of sending humans to Mars and establishing a colony are enormous, including the harsh conditions on the planet, the need for a sustainable life support system, and the potential risks involved in long-duration space travel. He has suggested that a focus on robotic exploration and scientific research might be a more prudent approach before considering large-scale human colonization. Some other plans include those from, of course, Robert Zubrin. Buzz Aldrin presented as a master plan for NASA to colonize Mars before 2040, involving astronauts with a tour of duty of 10 years, and even United Arab Emirates are rushing into establishing a settlement on Mars by 2117, led by Mohammed bin Rashid Center, which, for you who don't know, is a Dubai government organization working on the UAE space program, which also, among many other projects, includes the Emirates Mars mission. And if you have to be realistic about it, the only serious proponent here is Elon Musk with his SpaceX. On several occasions, he expressed ambitious goals for sending humans to Mars, with initial crewed missions targeted within this decade, so 2020s, right? However, it's important to note that timelines for space exploration are subject to change due to various factors such as technological challenges, funding, and unforeseen obstacles. Elon Musk envisions making travel to Mars affordable, possibly under $200,000 per ticket. Musk aims to establish a self-sustaining colony of 1 million people on Mars by the mid-21st century, emphasizing human survival and exploration. NASA, which thrived when Cold War was peaking, today seems to be in a back seat. Agency's goal is to determine if life ever existed on Mars, understands its evolution, and prepare for future human exploration. NASA targets the 2030s to land the first humans on Mars, with missions like Orion being developed for this purpose. And for now, University Valley, Antarctica is the closest thing to Phoenix landing site on Mars. So, I really hope you won't hold it against me. I know I might put too much attention on books here, but this is how I got hooked. I'm a dinosaur who grew up on anything I could read on space, science, and science fiction. When I wasn't staring in the visible stars above Quarter Bay, I was reading a lot. And Sirius was a science fiction monthly from back home I couldn't live without. Bradbury and Ballard were both some of my favorite writers. And some of the best short stories on Mars by Ray Bradbury include There Will Come Soft Rains from the Martian Chronicles. And this story reflects end-of-the-world anxiety and contains anti-war messages. And The Moon Be Still As Bright from the Martian Chronicles depicts human repeating mistakes made on Earth and Mars. The Million-Year Picnic from the Martian Chronicles, a poetic story about human colonization on Mars. The Martian from the Martian Chronicles, about explorers' encounters with a familiar yet mysterious town on Mars. These stories showcase Bradbury's imaginative storytelling and his ability to blend science fiction with profound themes and emotions. And another one, of course, it's a J.G. Ballard, known for his distinctive and provocative writing style, has also explored Mars in some of his short stories. One of his works, The Message from Mars, was published 6 years after the first space age. In this story, Ballard sends a group of astronauts on a Mars mission, leaving readers in suspense about their findings upon landing. While Ballard's exploration of Mars may not be as extensive as Ray Bradbury's in The Martian Chronicles, his unique storytelling approach and imaginative narratives make his works intriguing for readers interested in science fiction and Mars exploration both. I also liked Verne from a very young age. And it's funny, Terry Harpel from University of Florida and a founding member of the editorial advisory board of Verniana, or Jules Verne Studies, and a trustee of the board of directors of the North American Jules Verne Society, is with a good reason asking himself where's Verne's Mars? Which is an essay he published in Visions of Mars, Essays on the Red Planet in Fictions and Science, in which he contemplates why Jules Verne did not set a story on Mars. I still remember when I was visiting my dad in Zurich a long time ago at Jules Verne Panorama Bar was one of the first places I visited there, and I was asking myself the same thing. Really, how come Jules Verne never wrote anything about Mars? Well, apparently it's the path, not the destination, I heard someone saying. Or maybe Verne knew that going there is completely pointless? Who knows? I don't want to be suggestive about what I like or don't, so let's do it in a chronological order. First, there's Two Planets by Kurt Laswitz from 1897. A group of Arctic explorers seeking the North Pole find a Martian base there. So Laswitz's Martians are highly advanced and initially peaceable. They take some of the explorers back with them to visit canal-dominated Mars. Later, they're not so peaceable. Wernher von Braun, remember the paperclip operation dude? Yeah, that one. He was inspired by reading Two Planets as a child. Well, that was some inspiration, and only 1 year later, in 1898, a classic was born. The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, the book some call the godfather of all alien invasion plots. Then in 1912 came A Princess of Mars, a classic of a 20th century pulp fiction by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Then Red Star by Russian political activist Alexander Bogdanov from 1922. Lenin exiled him, but not to Mars, somewhere else. And the book is about a communist and feminist utopia on Mars. Then Red Planet by famous Robert A. Heinlein came in 1949. Though it's one of his books for kids, Red Planet's attention to detail, engaging characters, and smooth plotting show that with this book, Heinlein finally found his true direction as a writer. Remember, he was a naval officer, then he got TB and blah blah blah. Long story, so Heinlein deserves an episode on its own. In 1994, the novel was adapted and much altered into an animated miniseries for Fox Kids. For you who don't know, Robert Heinlein wrote the Starship Troopers, which in my opinion is a phenomenal, and the movie is good, but the movie has very little with the actual book. So 1 year later, in 1950, came famous The Martian Chronicles by my favorite Ray Bradbury. In this classic work of fiction, Bradbury exposes our ambitions, weaknesses, and ignorance in a strange and breathtaking world where man does not belong. Again, 1 year later comes Arthur Clarke's first published science fiction novel, The Sands of Mars. Then Outpost Mars by Cyril Judd in 1952, The Sirens of Titan by Kurt Vonnegut, 1959, and then phenomenal, again Heinlein, Stranger in a Strange Land in 1961. Mars is just a part of the backstory to this book. The reader never actually travels there. Despite mixed reviews, Stranger in a Strange Land won the 1962 Hugo Award for Best Novel and became the first science fiction novel on the New York Times Book Review bestseller list. In 1964, Martian Time Slip by Philip K. Dick. Remember the guy, the Blade Runner guy? Yeah? Then Farewell Earth's Bliss by D.G. Compton in 1966, which is more of a character study than a gripping page-turner. Then The Earth is Near by Czech artist and novelist Ludek Pešek in 1970. And The Space Machine, a scientific romance by Christopher Priest, 1976. Then again, Great Man Plus by Frederick Pohl. Well, he's one of the giants of science fiction for sure. That was 1976. Then Genesis, an epic poem by Frederick Turner in 1988. And Genesis, and it was the first major work of fiction that addressed the idea of terraforming Mars. So that's important. During its initial publication, Genesis was on the list of recommended reading at NASA and had since gone to enjoy cult status. Same year came Desolation Road by Ian MacDonald, and Desolation Road reads like a series of short stories. An elderly couple gets lost in the infinite space of their garden. Then a baby growing in a jar is stolen and replaced with a mango. A man called the Hand plays electric guitar for the clouds and starts the first train for 150,000 years. In 1992, Mars by Ben Bova. Then Moving Mars by Greg Bear in 1993, and it won Nebula Award a year later. Same year, the beginning of an epic political and terraforming trilogy with, of course, who else but Kim Stanley Robinson and his trilogy Red Mars, Blue Mars, Green Mars. Also, there's a Martian Race by Gregory Benford in 1999, which is a hard science fiction thriller. Then The Martian Race is about two competing teams struggling to get to Mars and returning safely. And finally, The Martian by Andy Weir, 2011. I don't know about this one. I saw a movie and I don't know what to think. I'll skip the movies, but I recommend you to watch The Passage to Mars by Jean-Christophe Joffre, which is a pretty great documentary about a NASA Arctic expedition designed to be the first Martian road trip on Earth, which became epic 2-year odyssey of human adventure and survival. Okay, so can we terraform Mars? Well, first we have to get there. And with the present technology or chemical rockets, it's going to take 7 months at least. But in the future, if we ever go nuclear, and I'm talking about fission, not fusion for now, it's going to take 3 months, which is kind of an improvement, right? So that is a story for some other time, and I will be back to that as well, I promise. I know I'm promising a lot, but this podcast is going to last forever, so we'll see. But once we are there on Mars, can we terraform it? Well, not everyone agrees on this, but whatever happens, we have to go slow. Not because we want it, but it's because there is no other way around it. And guess what? It might take 100,000 years to do it. Yeah, if you thought we will nuke polar caps and do the same thing with the dead core to reignite it so it can produce magnetosphere again, and then forget about it. That kind of geoengineering belongs to someone higher on Kardashev scale. Humans, as we are at 0.75, can't even live long enough to do something serious, never mind the fact that we would rather spend trillions to exterminate each other because of the real estate, the joint forces, and look for a piece of land in the skies suitable for everyone. Mars might not have a lot going on at the moment life-wise, but the dusty red planet might not be as inhospitable as it seems. New experiments have shown that cyanobacteria, aka blue-green algae, can successfully grow in Martian atmospheric conditions. Here we show that cyanobacteria can use gases available in the Martian atmosphere at a low total pressure as their source of carbon and nitrogen, said astrobiologist Cyprien Verso, I think, of the University of Bremen in Germany. Under these conditions, cyanobacteria kept their ability to grow in water containing only Mars-like dust and could still be used for feeding other microbes. This could help make long-term missions to Mars sustainable. Scientists believe that a cyanobacteria boom 2.4 billion years ago was largely responsible for our breathable atmosphere. When it exploded onto the scene, cyanobacteria pumped the atmosphere with oxygen, dramatically altering the entire planet. Mars' atmosphere is made up of mostly carbon dioxide, 95%, and nitrogen, 3%, both of which are fixed by cyanobacteria, converting them into organic compounds and nutrients respectively. The bioreactor was water, which can be obtained on Mars from melted ice, which is abundant on the surface in certain places, and a Martian regolith simulant, a mixture of minerals created here on Earth using only what can be found here to assess whether the cyanobacteria grown in Martian conditions could continue to be useful. This showed that sugars, amino acids, and other nutrients can be obtained from the cyanobacteria to feed other cultures, which can then be used for other purposes such as producing medications. So today, 100 or 200 years from now, when we will probably have some sort of permanent habitat in Martian caves, Project Mars 1 will be remembered as the biggest marketing flop ever made. I'm not going to say I was not a believer when it came out. On the opposite, I was 100% sure it will work out. The broadcast from the crew, Big Brother Mars 1 will pay for the flight and everything else, and that was my conclusion, but unfortunately that didn't happen. So ambitious private project Mars 1 bankrupted in 2019, and I was heartbroken. I really believed this is going to work. They were supposed to be funded by media and Mars Big Brother subscription. I mean, really, who wouldn't want to watch 20-something minutes delayed live stream from a one-way ticket on a Flying Dutchman spaceship? I mean, that's wild. Imagine watching them like the crew for 7 months, like without a proper shower, like isolated, descending into madness and plotting against each other. Were investors counting on the lowest human instincts? Mars 1 considered Elon Falcon and even negotiated with Lockheed Martin, and while Elon Musk's concrete projects on Mars colonization are still in the air, there's a CHAPIA, NASA Mars Habitat Simulation. So on June 25th, 2023, a crew of 4 volunteers entered the simulated Martian habitat from which they will not emerge for over a year. Their mission to learn more about the logistics and the human psychology of living long-term on another planet without ever leaving the ground. The mission is called CHAPIA. Shortly, that's an acronym for Crew Health and Performance Exploration Analog, and it's the first of 3 planned simulations between now and 2026, each of which will teach scientists progressively more about what it takes for long-duration human spaceflight to succeed. Crew Health and Performance Exploration Analog is a series of analog missions that will simulate year-long stays on the surface of Mars. Each mission will consist of 4 crew members living in a Mars Dune Alpha, an isolated 1,700 square foot habitat. During the mission, the crew will conduct simulated spacewalks and provide data on a variety of factors, which might include physical and behavioral health and performance. You know what? It's physically located in Texas, not Mars, so gravity is pretty much like the rest of the Earth. There is more to the mission than just close quarters. Actually, the crew will only be able to communicate with the outside world on a time delay. On Mars, messages can take up to 22 minutes to reach Earth, and that restriction is being applied to CHAPIA. That's 44 minutes round trip. The crew will also follow. So what about other active missions? Well, other active missions are Perseverance rover, then there's Tianwen-1 and Zhurong, China's Mars orbiter, and rover searching for pockets of water beneath the surface that could host life. Hope mission by United Arab Emirates, building a complete picture of Mars climate, ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, mapping Mars, atmosphere in collaboration between European Space Agency and Roscosmos. But I don't know about that one. Rosalind Franklin, previously known as the ExoMars rover, is a planned robotic Mars rover, part of the International ExoMars program, which is again led by European Space Agency with the assistance of Russian Roscosmos, but has been indefinitely postponed because of Russian invasion of Ukraine. ESA voted to suspend the joint mission with Russia, but I'm really not sure about this one because I don't know what's going on with them. So the future, well, even Poland, the new European military powerhouse, is planning a Mars mission in the future, which is extraordinary thinking of where they were not so long ago. I cross my fingers for them. Go Poland! Other missions are Escapade by NASA, which consists of twin Mars orbiters, and it's launching this year in August. It's a twin spacecraft Class D mission dedicated to studying the transfer of solar wind energy and momentum through Mars' unique hybrid magnetosphere and how it drives ion and sputtering escape. Then Mars Base Camp, MBC, is a theoretical crewed Mars laboratory orbiter concept under study that was commissioned by NASA from Lockheed Martin. Yeah, the notorious Lockheed Martin. Although LM is a serious experienced player, I don't see any concrete updates on the project, and my bet is still on free-thinking, pot-smoking Elon Musk rather than on the US defense contractor who suddenly wants to be cool as Elon. In 2026, JAXA, or Japanese Space Agency, will launch MMX, Martian Moon's exploration mission, to Mars moon Phobos, so they can return samples by 2031. And Japanese are already proven in those types of missions. Hayabusa, remember, formerly known as MUSE-C for Mu Space Engineering Spacecraft C, was launched on May 9, 2003 and rendezvoused with Itokawa in mid-September 2005. After arriving at Itokawa, Hayabusa studied the asteroid's shape, spin, topography, color, composition, and density. In November 2005, it landed on the asteroid and collected samples in the form of tiny grains of asteroidal material, which were returned to Earth aboard the spacecraft on 13 June of 2010. And finally, in October 2024, a brand new space power, India. India's Mars Orbiter Mission 2 plans to launch 2 orbiters. Great. Good work, India. Anyway, so, sooner or later, we'll be there, we'll be on Mars. By the 2030s, establishment of the first human base on Mars is anticipated. And again, my bet is on Elon, not because he's smarter than NASA. I just think he can, he can offer more, and NASA doesn't have this will anymore. There is no Cold War anymore. Although the new Cold War is coming, but still, those times of competition between Soviets and the West world, those days are over, right? So will we ever find a proof of second genesis on the red planet? That's hard to say. If we do, it's good to know that contamination on Mars is, according to astrogeologist McKay, reversible. Yeah, it is. So Mars doesn't belong to anyone, and so I might as well start a fundraising to build my own Slaven space section, or simply visit a company called Recall to implant some fantastic false memories without ever moving from this pale blue dot. Or I can simply visit the Atacama Desert. Anyways, thank you for being with me on Earth for the 3rd time altogether. Stay selective. Bye.